In our reducers and action files, so in the store file in general, we won't have to do anything because all that Redux related stuff can stay as it is. It's not related to components, and therefore we don't need to do anything with React hooks in there. The shared folder has our utility file, and these functions here can also stay the way they are. Now in the HOC folder, that changes. Here we got 4 components. Now the aux component is a functional component. The async component, which we use for lazy loading when we route, is actually a functional component that returns a class-based component. Now we could try to convert this, but actually it's not worth the effort. Instead, we can delete this whole async component folder and instead use a feature I introduced in the React routing module of this course. We can use React Lazy. We do that in app.js, and we use a native built-in React feature now for lazy loading. Instead of using async component here in these 3 places, you can call React Lazy here. The lazy method is provided by React, and essentially it does what we before had to do manually with async component, with our higher order component. This was added with React 16.6. So now with React Lazy here, we have to add one other thing though, or we have to import one other thing, and that's the suspense component from React. This has to wrap any place where we want to use these lazy loaded components. And I will also rename these components to checkout, orders, and auth, so that I can now use them as JSX elements, and hence they have to start with capital characters. And then down there for the routes, where I will render them in the end, I will wrap this place here with suspense. So put the closing tag after routes here. And suspense takes a fallback property which defines what to render whilst we're waiting for one of these lazy loaded components to load. And there I'll render a paragraph where I say loading. You could render anything here. You could render a spinner, whatever you prefer. So now we can use our lazily loaded components in the routes. And for that, we just have to replace component here with render. And then there we get a function that executes, which should simply return our JSX component. So auth like this. The burger builder is not lazy loaded, so we don't need to change it. But down there, all these marked components there, we use the render method instead, and then simply return, in this case here, the checkout being rendered. Inside of this function, we pass to render. Here we use, or we render orders. And then down there, we also use the render method. And we render the auth component like this. And now with that, we're using React Lazy and Suspense. Of course, now I need to remove that async component import up there. Otherwise, I'm getting this error, which I'm getting. And with that out of the way, this still works, and you can see I can still navigate around. We're now using React Lazy though. So we didn't really change a component to a functional component here. We're nonetheless using a modern React feature, which is never a bad idea.